The Dead Pair Podcast is brought to you by Elite Shotgun. They stand behind you. And is fueled by Fiocchi.
Welcome to the Dead Pair Podcast. Coming in hot with everything you want to hear about sporting clays.
Ben Hustway.
Each short Hawaiian person would have to fight 14 kangaroos.
Let's get Anthony on the phone.
You're making a big mistake, okay?
Yeah. We're talking Gianna Santo tonight.
Well, I have something, but I don't know how much everyone's going to like it.
I was not ready for that.
With your hosts, Jason Rambo.
You just didn't want my wife to edit something else you did.
And Sean Alley.
You gotta keep it PG-13, man.
Often imitated, but never duplicated. It's the Dead Pair Podcast. The Dead Pair. And now, it's showtime.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to part 2. What's up, Mr. Large and in charge?
Well, Jason, like the rest of everybody, I'm on the edge of my seat because I think we kind of left it as a cliffhanger on this last episode, and I'm sure everybody's wanting to hear what the heck David and Neil are about to say next.
So what's the over-under on whether or not David remembered his question? I told him to write it down.
I'm not even going to place a bet, to be honest with you.
He's either going to surprise you or
That's the thing about David. He'll either come, prepared, ready to go and have a breakdown on a flow chart and everything, or he'll be like, what was I supposed to remember? I mean, that's the only way it's going to go. It's one of those two ways.
Man, well, hopefully he remembered to plug his car in so he could plug his laptop into his car. So,
right.
Oh my goodness, that guy, what was he, half hour late last week? So, yeah. But we'll see what he comes up with this week. Hey, no tourney talk this week. But we do want to announce, and very thankful, very humbled, Score Chaser is going to be back with us again next year. Love working with Casey Chase and everybody over at Score Chaser. It's been awesome. The relationship. We've had some emails and some texts and whatnot from listeners that are really enjoying that tourney talk. Understand, we try to get it to you. The second she gives it to us, we try to get it up immediately. And sometimes it's a week later than it needs to be, but hey, we release it as quick as we get it. And she's giving them to us, sometimes she gives them to us in advance, and says, hey, it's going to be open on this date. But sometimes it's, hey, it came open today, so.
That's right.
We do what we can. We get it to you as quick as we can. And I know if you're not one of these people that follows Score Chaser on your app or whatever very closely, sometimes this stuff can be a surprise to you. So we try to get it to you as quick as we can. But point is, thank you to Casey Chase and everybody at Score Chaser. Look forward to having them back next year. Sean Alley, I don't know if these two are going to ramble long or not, so we better get going and get Neil and David back on the phone.
Absolutely, man. Let's make it happen. Hey guys, Jason and I really love bringing this podcast to you week after week, but it does take a lot of time and a lot of resources to make it happen. And without these very special people, we couldn't do it on a week-by-week basis. Hey, Toby Tomplay, help these guys remember who they need to support.
Yes, sir. They can support Fiocchi USA, Elite Shotguns, Vero Beach Clay Shooting Sports, Score Chaser, Odo Pro Technologies, Rhino Chokes, RE Ranger, Taconic Distillery, and Atlas Trap Company.
All right, welcome back, David Radulovich and Neil Chadwick. Now, David, I told you to write it down so you wouldn't forget it from last week. What was your question for Neil?
So my question was that, obviously I know a good example for this would be Cardinal Center. I believe that, so when I looked at the high volume clubs for 2019, they had maybe, I'm going to rough estimate, it was somewhere between 5 to 900,000 targets thrown. But obviously I know, and actually Jason and Sean would probably know better than me. I believe that sometime around that year, they were like either 8 or 9 million targets that they purchased from White Flyer. Am I correct?
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah,
that sounds right. Yeah.
My question would be, out of pure curiosity, because I think Neil would be a perfect source for this. Like, and Neil, where do you live? I know you're in the Northeast, right?
Yeah, New Hampshire.
New Hampshire, yeah. What would be your feel for like the amount of registered versus non-registered targets that would be a typical breakdown for a non-major event throwing course or club? Like, let's just say in your area. Do you have could you do like a percentage if you had to guess? It'd be kind of hard.
That's easy.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Now, there are some other little clubs in New Hampshire that are not NSCA clubs. As far as I'm aware, there is one, which is called 20th Skeet.
Mm-hmm.
And they will throw regular registered targets. They'll hold the New England Open or the New Hampshire State or something like that. But still, by far, the most targets that they throw will be non-registered targets.
Right.
It's their daily business. And I think most clubs will throw non-registered targets because that's their daily business.
Right.
And you mentioned high volume clubs. The dynamics of shoots now is changing. Mm-hmm. And this year I was at the Hall of Fame, and for example, Covey Rise got in as a high volume club, I think at number 9 or number 10.
Cool.
Well, the only reason they got that was because they held the regional last year.
Right.
So you can almost count on who are going to be high volume clubs. The ones that hold the regionals, the ones that hold the US Open, things like the club that holds Jack Links, that type of club, they will always be high volume clubs. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, though, going back to sort of non-registered targets, and I'm not going to tell you where I get this from. The number of targets sold year on year, this is the number of total targets, so that includes trap and skeet and all the clubs, is increasing.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
So we're throwing more targets around the country, not necessarily, obviously, registered targets.
Right. The thing I would be interested in knowing would be, and probably Whiteflyer would be a good source for this, but it would be very interesting to look at the, like basically the purchase order breakdown in terms of, is that number increasing because certain clubs are buying a massive amount more and other clubs are buying a little bit less, or like what the breakdown would be. That would be a good number to look at, but I don't think that'd be one that we could get.
Neil, okay, so with all this being said, and by the way, you're now on the executive council. Congratulations!
Oh yeah, congratulations, Neil.
Thanks.
You stepped off into
congrats.
You've officially stepped off into the deep pool.
Oh, I have.
So with all this being said, Neil, how do we find a balance in promotions to not only promote big shoots, but also local tournaments that are at a grassroots, as like David alluded to? How do we find that balance? Because right now, and I hope nobody railroads me for this, it just seems like the governing body is so heavily focused on the regionals, US Open, nationals, and there's nothing to be said for the local signature shoots. So how do we find that balance? Is that something that the NSCA has looked at? Do you know?
Well, you're wrong in that statement.
Okay.
Because the NSCA does a lot down to the state level shoot.
Okay.
Okay. And, whether it be promotions or stuff sent, the state level shoot basically is the beginning level, if you like, of the registered shoots. There's the monthly registered shoots, which clubs hold, but nationally recognized would be the state level shoot. And the NSCA promotes those and does quite a bit to help ensure that they're successful shoots. As the numbers increase, especially in regional shoots, and we can see year on year that the numbers increase across regional shoots, the US Open, big shoots, the World English Anthony's. I mean, what was that, 1,700 people? Anthony is in the ideal area. He's an hour and a half from New York City, Connecticut, New Jersey. I mean, there's however many million people within Anthony's catchment area. I don't think that detracts. The increase in numbers in those types of shoots does not detract from your local shoot. I don't think it does. I see growth everywhere on the clay side.
Okay, well, I'm glad you said that, because that kind of leads me into my next question. Is like one of the problems I see arising from the regionals and the Open, given their current growth rate, which you just alluded to, is the ability for most clubs to host a shoot of that size. I mean, not everybody can hold a regional US Open. And there's even, if you look at some states, like, David lives in Arkansas, there's 4 clubs there. None of those 4 clubs could ever hold a regional there. So now you're starting to exclude states as well as clubs. So is this something that the NSCA has looked at, these numbers, and seen this as an issue or a problem in the near future? Or is it no?
I mean, that's a unique problem. You're absolutely right in what you say. When you get up into the 600, 700, 800 people, where are you going to put them? Where can you hold them? I mean,
that goes to my point. Is there's only a certain amount of clubs that can host that many people.
Correct. But I think that we'll also see some clubs come onto the circuit. Take Pete Malloy's place, great place up in Wisconsin, did a fantastic job at World English. Not World English, World FITAS.
World FITAS.
Yeah, great job.
Has plenty of room, and now is going to do the Open in
26.
Yeah.
So, and he'll do a great job up there. So now he hasn't done anything like that before. He certainly hasn't done anything like the World FITAS before, but now he's changing his ground and his acreage so that he can accommodate these bigger shoots. Are there many clubs that can do that? I wouldn't have thought that there are many at all. So we'll still, we'll still have the regular ones. Rick's place down at Backwoods, Anthony, Hopkins to a certain extent, Coyote. I mean, those types of places. Cardinal could certainly put on a big shoot. There's no doubt about that. But I think you're absolutely right. With the numbers increasing, the number of clubs is not decreasing that can hold them, but it's not increasing as fast as it should be.
Okay.
I would have an addendum question to that. What's the feel or the opinion on, and I don't really have a stance on this, it's really just another viable option if this problem continues to persist. But Neil, do you know of, how the NSCA feels about, let's say, if these shoots start to get bigger and bigger and bigger, essentially, I mean, the requirement to apply for, to send a bid in for an event, there's a few requirements there for how many events you can hold and how many courses, that kind of stuff. And what's the thought on possibly making it to where either that in order to deal with an increase in demand, but not an ability to match that, either increasing the entry fees to find an equilibrium there, or changing the bid structure, the bid packet structure to where the shoots don't necessarily have to be, so grand in terms of events. Do you know what the thought is on that?
Well, this is not an official NSCA stance, right, but I believe that there's 2 options. You can fill up a tournament and cut it off. So if you've got a number of events, for example, AFS, Nationals next year is full. Now, currently, and we certainly haven't discussed it yet, but we may be able to put 2 more AFS layouts in. FITAS is full. Now, that happened this year also, and I managed to get them to open it up on Monday, which obviously then filled up. So we're going to reach a point where these numbers, if you don't get in, you won't. It'll be full. The other way that you could do it is extend the time, like we've done over Nationals over the year, from a 4-day to a 6-day to a 10-day shoot, which is not always ideal because people can't get the time off. But that's one possibility to give the competitor, an entry, basically somewhere to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, David, you keep quiet on this. You're not allowed to answer this because this could very easily open up a giant rabbit hole. Is there ever been any talk, Neil, about having to qualify for these shoots as a shooter?
Are you talking about nationals or regionals?
Any of the above. I mean, if it continues to grow the way it is. Now, I understand nationals is a separate beast because it's ran over so many days. But like a regional or a U.S. Open, if it continues to get so big, is there ever been any talk as far as shooters having to qualify in order to go?
Again, my personal opinion, I think if you start to make qualifiers for that, you're gonna put off people from attending.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
I just wondered if it was ever discussed as a viable option.
Not that I'm aware of, but of course, I'm not on the EC yet until January 1. With the meeting being 16th, 17th of January. So I should be down there in Texas. Maybe somebody will bring it up. If they don't, I will bring it up as a topic.
Yeah. I was curious.
Sorry, I was just going to say, and to Neil's point, about extending the shoot length. Now, Cardinal does host the SCTP National every year, and that's about 3,500 kids, give or take. But it takes them, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, I think it's about a 9 or 10 day shoot. Like they start on a Thursday, run to that weekend, and then the whole entire following week, and then they stop on that Sunday. So, I mean, you're talking about adding quite a few days. I mean, again, that's an awful lot of shooters to get pushed through there, especially when they're doing, skeet, trap, and sporting clays on top of everything else. So, yeah, if it does keep growing, I mean, that might be how you would have to handle it. I mean, I don't see any other way of jamming more in. I mean, you either have to have more land or more days, right? I mean, that's the only way to solve it, right, Neil?
You're absolutely right, Sean. I mean, just to get more people through, you will have to extend the number of days. It's easy. I remember in 98 when we used to shoot old style FITAS in 98 in Australia, they went to new style FITAS. That jumped up the number of entries from 400 and something to 1,152.
Wow.
So, and that's obviously the World Championships has always been new style. From that point on, that was a luxury that they had. We don't have that in sporting.
Right. Neil, David was talking about the 20% loss in clubs. Is this something that the NSCA's looked at? Do you know?
I don't know. Like I say,
okay.
I'm not privy to some of the information that the EC looks at. Hopefully I will be come first of the year.
Okay, so since you don't know the NSCA stance, what's your opinion on how to fix that, Neil?
Or if it's something that needs to be fixed, because it could be going, like what we've talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does it? Do you need to fix it?
Okay. Yeah, I see where you're going with that.
I mean, if we've got 583 clubs, no, that's not right. Yeah, 19. And I'm not saying it's right. I mean, I would love every club in the country to be an NSCA affiliated club. But you're always going to get the club that just does not want to throw registered targets.
Yeah. Well, I guess for some insider information on that, I'll never forget. I was talking to Jake Spangler. This has been a few years ago. Maybe like towards the end of 19 or beginning of 20. He said he wasn't going to throw as many registered targets next year. I said, wait, what? What are you talking about? And he's like, we had just finished up a shoot. It was over Memorial Day or before Memorial Day weekend.
It was just before Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah. We had just finished up a shoot. And he said, you know that shoot you guys just did? And I said, yeah. And he said, there was, how many of you here? 270 something? I said, yeah, something like that. He said the following weekend, Memorial Day weekend, I had 350 people off the street. He said, unlike you tournament shooters, these guys didn't come with their own side-by-sides and golf carts, so they rented them. They didn't come with their own ammo, so they bought them. Some of them didn't even come with their own guns, so they rented them. By the way, I sold some guns.
Yeah.
They didn't come with their own glasses and earplugs, and I sold them to them. And I didn't have to provide trappers. I didn't have to provide lunch. The only thing I had to do was have somebody fill traps. And I looked at him and I had nothing. I had no rebuttal to that whatsoever, other than it really sucks because I wanted to shoot more registered targets. But from a financial club standpoint, I guess you can kind of understand where he's coming from.
Yeah.
I mean, he made more than double the money with less than half the people.
That's a common trend that I pick up on all these clubs that I go to is that, the cost of putting on an event, an NSCA event, both labor and including lunch and, all the things that you just, opportunity costs lost as well in that equation makes it kind of not a good business decision to do that, for certain size clubs. And I would think, what if I was in, Neil, this may be a thing that you may want to look into now being on the EC, because, project that out. I don't know how it compares and contrasts and balances the scales when we're talking about all these major shoots. But I would look at that, as a revenue loss, for the NSCA. And that would be a thing that, if you project out multiple years into the future, and if that's the trend, if every 6 years we lose 20% of the clubs in NSCA, but they continue to throw events because the NSCA business model doesn't work that well, that would be a problem, I would assume,
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to agree with that statement. I mean, by not throwing registered targets, NSCA loses out on their target fee.
Right.
So, David, do you have any ideas as far as, what would you push forth if you were in Neil's position and you could present something to the NSCA to try to solve this problem? Where would you start?
Well, that's a good question.
Wait a minute. You only get 2 minutes.
It's a very good question. And honestly, I can speak towards that from a club owner perspective. Because in 2019, I applied for the club that I started. I joined the NSCA as a club, and then I would be part of the statistic that is a club that left the NSCA. And what I would propose, not just my own personal experience, but also talking to a lot of these other clubs, is that I think there needs to be better outreach from the NSCA to clubs that either join the NSCA or are already members that are very low on the registered targets thrown per year list. Because I can tell you, when I joined the NSCA for the club that I started here in Arkansas, what I got in the mail was a plastic yellow sign that says eye and ear protection are mandatory. And I got a pamphlet that basically was a safety thing. But other than that, I got nothing else. And, there are a lot of people that start clubs that, if the NSCA could, as you join as a club for the membership of the NSCA, if you got, help on, what is a good profitable business model for tournaments and what are good pricing structures and how can you, even if I got a pamphlet in the mail, I wouldn't have needed it. But there are a lot of guys that do, a lot of clubs that do, like, hey, you have X amount of traps, give them a document that shows them, they can look up how many traps they have, what would be the most profitable event to be able to throw, how and where do you market and advertise your tournament, what options are available to you, maybe like an email list of all the NSCA members that are within a certain range from you. Obviously, you can get that from Score Chaser or whoever you go to. But I would say the biggest thing is that I think that it would be really helpful and really easy for the NSCA to have some type of like accelerant program for new or low volume clubs, joining the organization, because the reality of it is it's a governing organization of our sport. And I want it to grow. And, I want the legs of the NSCA spread out all throughout all of the clubs, in all of the states, because the more tournaments that are being thrown in the small states that can't have regional championships, the more that you're going to create feeders, so to speak, for the big shoots. I'm only here because I live 20 minutes away from Hillendale, and my first tournament was a state championship, and that led me, to a whole career. But had I, I'll stop there. I'm way past my 10 words or less.
David, in answer to your question, David,
mm-hmm.
Yes, the NSCA could do probably more than it does for new clubs, But you, as a new club, you can certainly get an email list of all the NSCA members, either in your state or in your region or within a surrounding area that you could mass market to. It makes me wonder, do some of these clubs just not bother?
I think they just don't know, because I ask those questions. I sit down with the board. I'm involved in a lot of the boards for a lot of these small clubs. And number one, because of the structure of a lot of clubs that have boards, as you know, Neil, the boards on clubs, they recycle out every year. And so basically every year, everybody's resetting everything, and nobody can, knowledge isn't retained. And so I think a lot of the clubs, they just don't know that they can contact the NSCA for a lot of stuff and what all options and resources are available to them, mainly because, I think that it would be, if they had something immediately there, like send them a 3-ring binder or email them a 200-page PDF on all the stuff that they can just always cite.
Totally agree with you. But, it does work. On my phone, I get email alerts from Walpole Sportsman's Club in Massachusetts, Minuteman Sportsman's Club in Massachusetts, 20th Skeet from New Hampshire. I don't know why, but I get emails from Pat Liskey's up in Michigan. I say, Pat, I'm not coming, Pat. Okay. So there's clubs that are making use of these email lists and sending out, hey, we've got a turkey shoot on or a Thanksgiving shoot on, or what may not be registered.
Right.
But nevertheless, they're getting the word out. So I could, Walpole down in Massachusetts has got a shoot in 2 weeks' time. Can I make it? Yeah, I'm going to go. Or not, as the case may be. So, conversely to what you said, okay, I open a new club, and I just I got some local people come in or something. How does the NSCA know I exist?
Right.
They don't.
They don't.
So they can't send you anything. They don't even know you're there.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's got to take some work on the club.
What I meant was when you sign up for, because no one's going to know if you just open a club. But I think if you sign up and register as and you get your NSCA club number, that's when they should do that. And then
totally agree. I mean, if you register with the NSCA, they should know you're there and send you the necessary documentation, some promotional stuff. That I totally agree with you. Totally agree.
So let's summarize this debate. And David, I'll start with you. And Neil, you're going to love this. Given all your reasoning, David, that you stated in these 2 podcasts, you still remain a pro shooter that goes to all these large events. So what are you doing or implementing to further your cause?
Yeah. So
Neil's smiling. Look at him.
I'm sitting here and I'm just bitching every chance I can get. So a couple of things, because it really is, I really am passionate about it. Both, I think I can sometimes be misunderstood by a lot of people for being critical of maybe the NSCA and other things, but it's really because of my lifelong dedication and throwing everything I have at it. And I want nothing but the best, both for the NSCA and for all the clubs and the sport as a whole. But one of the things that I do is, all of my teaching, I don't, other than if maybe Northbrook has a regional or US Open or something, all of my teaching I do at smaller clubs, which is, I think, part of the reason why I have such a feel for this, because I'm always at clubs like that. And in doing that, what I end up getting is a lot of connection and outreach from people who, have never been to these big events and kind of only shoot at the local events. And I'm thankfully there to be able to encourage them, to do that and participate in more NSCA events. The other thing that I do and are pretty heavy-handedly involved in doing is I'm fairly active on all of the clubs that I teach at, and some that I don't. I'm not an active board member, but I participate in the board meetings and try to lend my advice, both in marketing and shoot growth. and how to bring in, there's a lot of weird business model things that I've come up with and noticed through my travels and in ownership of clubs, and also in my teaching that I've done to both track, what are different ways that you can do as a club owner to increase, target sales on a day-to-day basis of people coming into practice. How can we get more people at tournaments? How can we best utilize the amount of traps that we have to throw as many events as possible so that during tournaments we can make money? Basically, just lending my 25-year expertise on being involved in the industry, to these new board members every year, helping them make better decisions, and helping them to grow their signature events, marketing, and stuff like that. Another thing that I do is at all of these clubs, especially the ones that I teach at, I set targets for free for their tournaments. The way I look at it is, with these smaller, a good example would be the Spring Deuce at Rochester Brooks up in New York. If it's a place I'm really heavily involved in, and I would rather set targets, use the fact that I'm setting targets to advertise and possibly bring more people into that signature event, not charge the club for it so that they can instead use that money that they would pay a target setter to, bring in more traps or hire scorekeepers or whatever it is, have a better food vendor, but basically keep costs down and throw a better event. And then another thing that I think is heavily important and really actually interesting is, for all the events that I set targets for and a lot of the boards that I'm involved in, I really do create a lot of surveys and send a lot of survey questionnaires out for the members of the clubs, for the participants of the shoots and the events, trying to get feedback and information from the people that are there to practice or there to compete or just members of the club on what is it that they would like to see that would make them more incentivized to come and spend more money at the club and immerse themselves in the event and the game more. And then lastly, the most recent thing, really, with the whole thing about the Champions Network, the goal with that is to make it to where for the people that can't afford to go to these big shoots, and they are important because it is a pinnacle of our sports where you would eventually want to see yourself at being. There's a lot of people that can't afford to go or can't find the time to travel and leave work. The goal with that is to create a platform for people to feel the excitement of what it's like being there, to get excited about, making plans and setting a list of goals to accomplish and achieve to get better, to feel like they can go to an event like that and eventually participate in it. But in the meantime, stay home and watch the event and be part of a community of people and get that experience, and then, go and do it in the future.
All right. Well, to be fair, Neil, let's flip it back on you now. So what are your thoughts? I mean, is there anything in the immediate near future that you or the NSCA could potentially do to help smaller clubs gain more traction and, pull in enough members to where it's worth their while to throw registered shoots?
Well, that's a good question, Sean, and I'll start off on a different tack. David, you ought to be on the promotions committee. You don't need to be a delegate or an EC member, but you could join a committee and have a voice on what your thoughts are on promoting the NSCA, promoting new clubs. I think I'm correct in saying you don't need to be a delegate. You can be on a subcommittee.
Is that the advisory council or no?
No, there's no advisory council now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, it's delegates, and each state has so many delegates. In New Hampshire, we have one, which is me, because we've only got, I believe, 140 NSCA members. So we're allowed one, and Brad Newell was gracious enough to step down to allow me in this year. So you're a delegate, and then from a delegate, then you can be voted onto the EC, which there are 15 members of the EC. Now there's other subcommittees the rules committee, promotions, media. I mean, I don't know all what the subcommittees are. I will obviously find out. But following on from that, Sean, I will always be an advocate for the lower class shooters. And I don't mean to call them lower class shooters, but you know what I mean? We use that term lower class. They're not lower class at all. You know, each of those members, each of those competitors at the Nationals that won their class were national champions. They were as good as Brandon Powell. And it meant tremendous for them. Yeah. I had a guy in here today, back in 2015. He got his class champion on the K-Cup. And he was so proud. He got his phone out and showed me a picture of him standing on the podium in 2015 as D-class champion for K-Cup.
Cool.
Right?
That is cool.
So he had that on his phone. What do we,
9 years later.
8 years later.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
to me, the and I don't mean to, I have got nothing against masterclass or the pro class, but to me, you guys have already made it. Mm-hmm. You're always going to be now fighting amongst yourselves to see who is the best on a given day. For me, it's the rest of the people that make up the shoot. We had 2,533 people at the shoot. Okay. How many? I think there were, you can correct me, David, was there 70 or 80 on the pro squad?
It would have been probably 70 because I think maybe 60 because one buy-in. No, it would have been 80 because there were 5-man squads and one buy-in that wasn't a pro. So,
yeah. So which was great, Mm-hmm. But I look at the rest of the people, the other 2,480 people that were there.
Yeah.
But, I want them to have a good time. And that's why I said, at the beginning of last week's broadcast that we engineered this so that those people in the classes A through E would shoot better than they'd shot better before at the Nationals, which they did.
Yeah. And honestly, Neil, listening to all my students, all the people that I interface with, thank you for the approach that you take with that, because it's the vocal minority that can kind of skew people's perception of what the right approach to take is. And the vocal minority is, the pros and the people that, let's say the 400 people that travel to all of the tournaments every year. Yeah. But we're both sitting here with opposite opinions on this one topic that we're talking about. But at the same time, we are purely identically aligned in what where the sport actually is. And it's like you said, everybody outside of masterclass. And when you have the focus that you have and you make the Nationals what it was, I can tell you, listening to all of the people that I've talked with, read emails from, whatever, ever since that, their experience with that event is the highlight of their year. And that's the way that it should be, because people like me, we should be the tools of the NSCA, and you should use us and not really care too much about what we think about targets.
Right. Yeah. I would agree with that. Yeah. I would agree with that.
Yes.
Well, so let me wrap this up with a couple real quick questions here. Neil, 2-part question for you. Has this conversation changed or even enlightened your perspective on the whole topic of, small shoots versus big shoots?
Yeah, I mean, small shoots are obviously important. But me being involved for so long on sort of, I'm going to say, the larger shoots, particularly Nationals, regionals, and other, let's call them signature shoots, Seminole, I've been doing that, helping John Kent down there. I came back there last year. The sport is growing still at a phenomenal rate. I know that from my business. And David obviously knows that because he's getting more and more people saying, David, I need a lesson. Come and help me do this, or whatever it may be. And clubs saying, David, how do I do this? Mm-hmm. I get calls, not every week, but I get a lot of calls similar, how do I throw super sport in? Oh, okay. I can tell you how to do that. what's the difference between old style fit ass and new style fit ass? To me, it's just so easy. But to a new club or indeed an existing club that may not know, if I can explain it to them, it gives them the ability or the chance to maybe change what they do and improve their course, or get more members in, or improve the size of the shoot,
Yeah. So a second part of my question is, this is a big one. Do you think the NSCA will give this some attention?
I think we need to. There was quite a turnover of EC this year. Mark Baltazar is sort of a marketing guru, if you like. He put on the live coverage, which I'm guessing is a discussion for a different day. And there's talk on whether we will do that next year. I hope we do in some form or another. Yes, I mean, yeah, I think the NSCA now, with sort of some new input and some different ideas, may change direction, or not change direction, but think of different avenues. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. David, okay, last question for you. And you got to keep this short. I'm just warning you ahead of time.
David can't keep anything short.
No, I can't. The only thing I'm good at keeping short are my score on Neil's course.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. Has Neil's viewpoints enlightened your perspective any? Have you kind of changed your mind a little bit on his angle?
Yeah, I really actually liked the perspective that he brought of the, gradual incremental increase of immersion into the sport, and the natural progression of the shoot sizes. And but I think honestly, as you can probably tell listening to this whole conversation, I think really, I don't really think there was too much disagreement really to begin with.
No.
It's always good to have somebody like Neil, not just with his involvement in the sport, running events and setting targets, but also being an owner of Long Range, which has been around for so long and is at so many clubs. And, his insight into the growth of the sport is huge. I want to also just add one thing, because I just mentioned it previously, answering what I do to kind of back up my opinion. I mentioned that I help out a lot of the clubs and stuff with ideas and shoot things and ways to throw more targets. If anybody that is a club owner or on a board is listening to this podcast and you're interested in that, just send me an email to booking@dradulovich.com, and I can send you the stuff that I give and try to help, increase, long story short, increase target sales, because I'd like to, more than happy to send that out to anybody. So if anybody wants it, just send me an email.
Well, that's awesome. Well, yeah, Neil, do you have something?
Yeah, I want to add to that a little bit. And I've thought about doing this. Now that I'm on the EC, I'm sort of opening myself up to people's suggestions, comments, and blasphemy. And David just put his email up there. If anybody's got any ideas, thoughts, and keep them civil, email me at neilchad, NEILCHAD @gmail.com. And I'll reply to them, as long as there's no swear words in there. But it's definitely knowledge. Knowledge is the key. If you know what people want, and going back to what you said, David, a lot of the A through E class shooters don't say anything.
Yeah.
It's always the masterclass people. Oh, you can't shoot fit ass on skeet fields at nationals. Well, hold on a minute. There's 50 skeet fields there,
Can't use any of that land, Neil.
What was the other one? Oh, I don't want to shoot the main on the main event road anymore. Okay, well, tell me where you want me to put it, and I'll put it there. Or at least I'll give you a reason why I can't do it. So email me. I mean, I'm open to suggestion, really. And if anybody needs any advice or help, send me an email. I'm not going to give you my long range email because I get enough through that anyway.
There you go.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate both of you spending some time. I know it's been a long one split here between 2 episodes, and both of you can tell are very passionate about this, and it's awesome to see. Thank you for putting your personal information out there. If anybody does have any info, we'll put that right down in the show description too. We'll put both of their emails so you can reach out to them. But thank you both, David, Neil. Appreciate it. It's so fun as always.
Yeah.
David wasn't quite on the Ritalin as bad today, so we'll give him a little prop for that. But he was 30 minutes late getting here, so the hell with him anyway.
I want to thank both of you guys and Neil, because I think that, first off, for Sean and Jason, thanks for having a podcast like this. I think this is hugely important for the growth of the sport. And then Neil, thank you so much for doing this, especially now being a member of the EC. I think that, the people that are involved in the sport, being willing to, in a public forum, talk with somebody who have dissenting opinions and stuff for the purpose of finding good ways to grow the game, which everybody has that goal. I think that honestly, for lack of better terms, is badass. And the amount of respect that, honestly, and I hope that this sets a precedent for other people to do the same, because I think that that's incredibly important.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that comment. I really do.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Well, thanks again, guys. This has been cool.
Thank you.
The Dead Pair. Well, Sean, what do you think, man? That was a 2-week episode, part 1 and 2 with Neil and David. What are your final thoughts on big shoots, go or no go? I mean, I know we did a podcast on it, but now hearing both of their sides or perspectives, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think we went down a couple of different rabbit holes too, to be fair. I mean, we talked about, the clubs and how do you help the clubs out? How do you help small clubs throw more registered targets, and how do you make it worth their while? I mean, I still am the mindset of, if you're getting started into the sport, definitely spend time at your local clubs, because obviously that's going to be the most convenient place to go. Save your money, work on your basic skills, take a couple of lessons, right? Get your chops worked up. That said, at some point, don't just stay stuck in your home state, especially if you don't have a home state that has a wide variety of clubs. I mean, we're very fortunate here in Ohio. You're very fortunate down there in Florida. I mean, the guys in Texas and Georgia have, lots of different great shooting facilities to take advantage of. And sometimes we lose sight of that. Other states aren't so fortunate. So depending on where you live, if you only have a couple places to go shoot as an option, then you definitely want to try to travel out of your state to go see what else the world has to offer. There's a lot of big shoots you can go to. And again, as Jason and I have said multiple times, you don't have to go, 3, 4, 5, 6 different times a year, although it'd be great if we all had the money and time to do so. But treat yourself, go out, go to a Jack Links, go to a regional, go to a nationals, or go to a big state shoot and see what it's all about. Because I guarantee you'll walk away with a great experience. And also you're going to basically learn quicker, because you're going to be seeing a better class of target.
Well, and here's the thing is, if you're new to the sport, and I'm going to say a year into it, okay, it can be overwhelming going to a big shoot. It really can be. First of all, the cost of things. Let's talk about that for just a second. We've talked about it many, many times on this podcast. Just getting started, with, a gun, good equipment. Of course, we want to see you in Rangers. We want to see you in Oda Pros and all that kind of stuff. Everything we've talked about, buying some Fioccis and all that. It could be a lot. For the initial expense to get started is a lot. Well, if you go to a regional or US Open and you're paying for those targets, that's a lot of money. Plus, not to mention the fact that the cost of travel. So you need to be more grassroots, as David put it, and start at your local club. I highly recommend, if your first big shoot, I think you should go to your local state shoot, wherever that is, wherever you are. Support your local clubs, go to those tournaments, go to a state shoot. And when you're ready and you feel like, you don't care about your score going the first time, go to a regional or US Open go to the nationals. I mean, that's the pinnacle of the sport. I mean, that's the largest shoot in the world is the national championship. So, and there's so much to see, so much to experience, but it's going to come at a cost. Those targets are a lot more expensive than your local club, and you're going to have to travel, and that's going to be expensive. So just pace yourself, I guess, is my best advice I can give you, is pace yourself. Don't worry about the tournament itself as far as competing. Well, you'll get there. If you try to rush it like we did, you're going to spend a lot of money in the wrong direction, and you're going to get frustrated. We don't want to see that happen. We don't want to see anybody quit. So just pace yourself, is my best advice I could give. So
the biggest thing is make sure you're having fun, because why do it if you're not having fun?
That's
so
what the sport's all about. Yeah, exactly. That's what the sport's all about. I mean, there's tens of thousands of people that compete in this sport that are friends of yours you just haven't met yet. So
that's right.
Sean Alley, speaking of which, our message every week, what do we tell everybody?
Take somebody new shooting, introduce them to the sport, let them learn about it. If nothing else, talk to them. I mean, even if you don't take them out, tickle their brain a little bit and say, hey, you know what? What are you doing this weekend? What are you doing next weekend? Would you like to go do something cool, new? Would you like to shoot some targets? I think it's a lot of fun. Why don't you join me? And that's a good introduction. Get the juices flowing up there and let them kind of consider on it. And then, hopefully they'll join you and take them out and just maybe take them to your local range, or maybe take them, maybe if you're working and you got some work friends, you can take them to a corporate shoot or some kind of a charity shoot or something like that. You guys can put a team together or something like that. And you never know. I mean, it's usually a lot of fun for everybody. Most people, I would say the greater majority of people, when they get into this thing, they kind of fall hook, line, and sinker into it. And the next thing you know, they're out buying a gun, buying gear, buying stuff. And they're really, getting bitten by the bug. And it's a good hobby to have. So it's for sure good for everybody.
Absolutely. Hey, one little quick tidbit before we let you guys go, guys and gals. We're only going to have one more episode before the end of the year. So the week of Christmas and New Year, we will not have an episode. We're going to do a year-end review next. This is going to be kind of cool. We're going to recap everything from the year. We're going to have a special guest on, but Sean and I are going to do the majority of the talking, I think. We have some T's to cross and I's to dot, if you will. And this also is a good time to start making your plans for next year. Everything from planning shoots to, where you're going to go, where you're going to compete, and maybe that next big purchase, Mr. Alley. I'm still waiting on that ProSign Studio credit card so I can make my next big purchase. But
it probably got lost in the mail, I'm sure.
Yeah, is that what it is? Checks in the mail? Gotcha.
Yeah, it's somewhere out there.
But anyway, listen, we look forward to seeing you all back here next week. Isn't that right, Mr. Alley?
That's right. We can't wait to see you back here on the Dead Pair Podcast.
We'll see you next time on the Dead Pair Podcast.
The Dead Pair Podcast is brought to you by Elite Shotguns and Vero Beach Clay Shooting Sports and is fueled by Fiocchi USA. The Dead Pair theme song was written, arranged, and produced by Toby Tomplay. Big thanks to the following sponsors: RE Ranger, Odo Pro Technologies, Rhino Chokes, Score Chaser, Taconic Distillery, and Atlas Trap Company.